What is up, everyone? Welcome back to our lawn and welcome to episode 2 of the Level Up series. And what we're doing here is I am taking the absolute beginner and doing everything I can to walk that person all the way up through a more advanced hobbyist. So even if you're not a beginner, there's going to be things in this series that are for you. So please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, so you can follow along to everything that we're going to include here as we level up our own lawn care. As I mentioned, this is episode 2. You can check out episode 1, which is the introduction to the series and where I talk a little bit about mowing and watering, and there's some references to some fairly in-depth videos there as well. So this video is to conceptually talk about the next step. So you've started mowing, you've started watering, you have everything dialed in, it's starting to become nice and green, but there's some problems. Weeds are there from your unmanaged yard, from the previous owner, from the builder's topsoil that they brought in. And I believe that our weed control is the next step. Even before we get into fertilizers, we want to get the weeds out of our yard. And there are 3 different ways in which we can control weeds. There are pre-emergents, which are going to take any seed that is in the soil and not allow that plant, when it germinates, to establish. The next is post-emergent herbicide. That is, I have weeds and I can see them, and now I need a product that I'm going to go out and apply to kill those weeds. And the third is these fellas right here. Either in lighter weed pressure environments or with some types of grassy or other weeds that aren't really going to be able to be controlled by a selective herbicide, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Those you might just need to pull. That is obviously going to be the cheapest option for your weed control, but very likely not the easiest. So let's talk very briefly here about the pre-emergent side of herbicides and what those are. I have another video you can go check out that I go all the way in on what they are, what they do, how to use them, etc. But what a pre-emergent is going to do, and when we go to a store, what we're going to look for is words like stop weeds, or maybe it does just say pre-emergent, or prevent weeds. There are a couple different active ingredients under a couple different names. You have pendimethalin, which is Scott's primary pre-emergent. You have dithiopyr, which goes under the Dimension brand name, or you have prodiamine, or which goes under the name of Barricade. And you can also get these in either water dispersible granules, i.e. a solid product that is intended to be mixed into water and sprayed onto the lawn, or in the granular fertilizer in a bag that you're going to go spread via your spreader. In either case, this step is going to require you to make a purchase of a new product that you might not have. And my suggestion to the new person is you buy a fertilizer spreader and you go the granular route. Simply because I believe when we get into fertilizer, that is also going to be easier and a little bit less labor intensive to enter into fertilizing your yard via granular products rather than liquid products. So here we can stick with the granular on our pre-emergent and we can purchase ourselves a fertilizer spreader. And so what our pre-emergent is going to do is it's going to go out onto the soil. We are going to water it in or apply it right before a rainfall. And we are going to do this in the springtime as our soil temperatures start to come up towards 45 or 50 degrees. And you can check soil temperature via an online resource or with some sort of meat thermometer, soil probe, whatever you can find to actually go and check what your yard is specifically. And then once we're done with that application, once it's been watered in, that's going to work in the soil for a fairly long time, and that does depend on your application rate. Again, in terms of all of the detail on pre-emergence, go check out the other video. It's got a lot more information in it. One thing I will include in this one as a last point, if you plan on seeding in the spring, don't put a pre-emergent down because it will prevent your grass seed from germinating. Now, we're into post-emergence. We already have weeds in our yard. We have perennial things that are going to come back regardless of whether we use a pre-emergent, the weeds that were already there that went dormant for the winter and have come back. So how are we going to address those? And the first thing, as I mentioned, and the easiest is obviously going to be to go out there and pull weeds. If you want, you can grab the Grandpa's Weeder product or something similar where you can just stab it into the ground and it'll grab and you pull it out. I use that to get rid of an infestation of a grassy weed in my front yard renovation that I couldn't get an herbicide to touch, and just go out there and start pulling. When you do that, make sure you do get rid of that plant as best as you can. Now, for a more widespread problem, we're going to need a post-emergent herbicide. And now this also comes in either granular or liquid. Here's when I'm going to recommend the liquid product. And I'm going to recommend that you buy just a small handheld sprayer to start with. And the reason why I'm going to recommend that is we can spot spray, so we can use a little bit less product. And that is a cheap way to enter into starting to spray things onto your yard. For 20, 30, 40 bucks, somewhere in there, you can get a 2-gallon sprayer, or if you want, want to buy one of the 4-gallon backpack sprayers, those are $80 to $100. And much like the pre-emergent video, I have a video that talks about my go-to post-emergent herbicide and how you are going to apply that. So you can go check that out if you want to go look for the actual how-to. But in terms of conceptually how to approach this, there are infinity weed killer, weed control herbicide products out there. I'm really going to encourage you not to use a weed and feed type product. I know that's easy. I know it's at the store. I know you can put it through the spreader, you always have, but they're questionable to me in terms of how effective they are, and you're going to have a lot more success with the liquid product. And what I'm going to recommend when you start is you get whatever generic concentrated weed killer is available from your local hardware store. That's maybe Ortho, Spectracide. Roundup makes a selective weed killer, not the glyphosate based one that's going to kill everything. You pick that product up, follow the label, spray all the weeds you have in your yard, give it 30 days or so, spray again, and see what you have left. Because in my experience, I'm going to say after you do that, there won't be much left. So we don't need to get into the more commercial level, high concentrates, various different active ingredients that are out there. We can just stick with the basics and then see where that gets us and where we end. And then after we get through our 2 rounds of that generic weed killer, we can take a look at what's left, and we can use Google. You can ask your local extension, university, and figure out what you have left. And you can look at what herbicides are available to kill that particular plant, and then make the decision if the cost and expense to purchase that is something that you believe is worthwhile, or if you just want to live with whatever that weed is, or if we need to get into a full renovation. But that's not part of this video. And so again, I really hope you go check out the pre-emergent video and the how to kill weeds video that I have that are going to help you get started into understanding, getting into that next level. We've mowed, we've started to water properly, we're mowing on a good schedule. Now we're going to take that next step and we're going to get rid of the weeds in our yard so that we can get into the next step, which is starting to fertilize our yard and starting to really get it growing, filling in, thickening in, and getting that dark green color that you know you're starting to itch for now that you're starting to catch a hold of this little bug of taking care of your yard. So let me know if you have any questions. Go check out those other videos. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow along to everything we're doing here in our lawn. Leave your questions and comments down below. Like the video if you haven't already. All of those things. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.